Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, Egypt is looking forward to expanding its trade ties with Africa. This is in light of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi stressing on the significance of economic integration within the African continent. So we will be focusing tonight on the Egyptian-African economic trade ties. But before we start doing that, let's check out some of the main stories making the news today. And we'll start off with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who received the director of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, William Burns, on Tuesday. Presidential spokesperson Ahmed said the meeting witnessed a confirmation of the deep and strong relations that bind the two countries, as well as the Egyptian-American strategic partnership. Burns conveyed President Biden's greetings to President el-Sisi and expressed his appreciation for Egypt's tireless efforts in advancing the path of calm in the Gaza Strip, the ceasefire and exchange of detainees. He highlighted Egypt's pivotal role in providing an entering of the humanitarian aid into Gaza since the outbreak of the crisis started. The meeting reviewed developments of the current situation in the Gaza Strip and confirmed that intensive consultations and coordinations would continue to achieve a ceasefire agreement, protect civilians and activate a two-state solution in a way that maintains security and stability in the region. Burns was due in Cairo for a new round of talks on a Qatari-brokered ceasefire proposal that would temporarily halt fighting in exchange for Hamas freeing hostages. His visit comes after Washington and the United Nations warned Israel against carrying out a ground offensive into Palestinian Rafah without a plan to protect civilians who have nowhere left to go. Also today, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received the Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman al-Thani. In the attendance of Head of the Egyptian Intelligence Service Abbas Kamel and Head of the Qatari Security Authority Abdullah bin Mohammed al-Khalifi. The meeting tackled joint efforts which are aimed at ceasing fire in the Gaza Strip and protecting civilians from the deteriorating situations in the besieged territory, in addition to transferring humanitarian and medical aid to Gaza. The two sides warned from the escalating operations in Rafah in the south of the Gaza Strip, as well as the negative consequences which could result from such violence amid a looming humanitarian crisis. They called on intensifying international efforts in order to evade broadening the cycle of violence and tension in the Middle East region. Presidential spokesman Ahmed said the Qatari Premier conveyed greetings of the Qatar's Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad al-Thani, to President el-Sisi, expressing his country's keenness to continue consultations and coordination with Egypt. For his part, President el-Sisi expressed Egypt's appreciation to Qatar and confirmed the brotherly ties binding the two nations and peoples. And via video conference, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi presided over the 41st session of the Oriented Committee of the Heads of State and Governments of NIPAD today. This session, which convenes annually to prepare for the African Summit, was attended by a number of heads of state and government member states. President el-Sisi delivered Egypt's speech in which he expressed his pleasure to head the committee in February 2023. He said the meeting coincides with a decisive stage of African joint action in parallel with the end of the first 10-year stage of the 2063 Developing Plan. The meeting tackled NIPAD's vision in carrying out the second stage of the 2063 Developing Plan. These were some of the main stories making the news today, but now focusing our attention on trade with Africa. Let's check out this report regarding President Sisi stressing on the significance of economic African integration, and we'll be right back.
President Sisi has underlined the importance of giving momentum to economic integration in order to promote prosperity of African people and enhance peace and security in the continent. President Sisi stressed on the importance of boosting intra-African trade and exploiting the continent's vast economic potential and natural resources in various sectors. He also called for coordination and cooperation among African countries. He said the continent has necessary capabilities and capacities for development and cooperation, but some challenges hinder this process, reiterating that Egypt is committed to building, developing, reconstructing, and cooperating with the African countries. The president said that when Egypt has assumed the presidency of the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, the continent was witnessing important international and regional developments. He said Egypt focused during its COMESA presidency on key objectives, including promoting Africa economic integration and enhancing peace and security in the continent. The head of state noted Egypt had attached great significance to activating the African Continental Free Trade Area and maintaining its harmony with tripartite free trade agreement, which comprises COMESA, Southern African Development Community, and East African Community. The president said, thanks to Egypt's efforts during its presidency of the economic bloc, the intra-COMESA exports had reached $13 billion in 2022, the highest in value since the inception of the free trade area within the framework of COMESA in 2000, adding that trade exchange between Egypt and COMESA member states in 2022 had recorded its highest volume since Egypt joined the bloc, reaching $4.3 billion. The president highlighted an initiative introduced by Egypt on regional industrial integration within the framework of COMESA manufacturing strategy, which seeks promoting the industrial production through improving the regional value chains. President Sisi hailed the role of the COMESA Regional Investment Agency, which is hosted by Egypt, with a view attracting investments to COMESA member states, urging directing further investments to the industrial sector. Minister of International Cooperation Rania Al-Mashat said Egypt greatly contributes to efforts aimed at achieving development in Africa, either at bilateral level or through its presidency of African Union entities, citing that President Sisi currently chairs the steering committee of the new Partnership for Africa's Development Agency, NEPAD, for the period 2023 to 2025.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're joined here tonight in the studio by Mr. Ahmed Khattab, member of the African Committee at the Canadian Council and the economic expert. Mr. Khattab, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for you and the honor.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Khattab, now talking about Egypt and Africa. Since President Sisi assumed office, he spoke a lot and worked a lot on strengthening the relationship between Egypt and the African continent, all the African states. Now, Egypt and the rest of the world are going through their own economic difficulties and crises. And one of the closest solutions is the African continent that we are part of. So having an economic integration and the Egyptian trade ties with the African continent seems to be one of the most solid ways to try and get out of an economic crisis. How important and significant is it to really strengthen the trade relations between Egypt and Africa rather than the rest of the world?
First of all, let me present a special thanks by all Egyptian and all African people to President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, because once the President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, chairman of African Union in 2019, he put a lot of steps and basics to the increase the volume and size of trade, especially between the Inter-Africa group through the COMESA and a lot of committee related to investment and aims to increase the mutual trade between Egypt and all African countries. Our President Sisi sent a key message to the world with the political stability. The economic will go fast and the growing rate of African country will increase. The main challenge faced a lot of African country is instability. African country is a very rich country, very rich in field of agriculture, very rich in field of petroleum, oil and gas, in mining, special gold, in also food security, because Africa is a very rich countries for introducing agriculture and especially organic agriculture. So President Sisi also tried to make a lot of expenditure in the field of infrastructure in order to make the connection between Egypt and Africa is very easy. Such upgrading in infrastructure of Suez Canal corridor and the Suez Canal logistics area and a lot of also submarines and a lot of international agreement related to the national security of Suez Canal. Such agreements also facilitate the process of inter-African trade, especially Egypt as a gateway to sustainable investment in Africa and Egypt as a gateway to support export of all African product to all the world, especially Europe and USA, for example. So once we have infrastructure ready to make a connection between all key African countries like Egypt, like Nigeria, South Africa, like Libya, for example. So once we have ready infrastructure, we have the chance to increase the size and volume of trade internal Africa and outside Africa, especially with Europe. A lot of countries like Russia, like China, like Japan, like America, aims to make a lot of investment in country in Africa, but they reach in the stable country like South Africa and a lot of key country like Egypt also as a key country in Africa, especially in have a strategic location in the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea and have Suez Canal corridor and Suez Canal logistics area supporting the trade. So let me send a positive message about the investment in Africa and investment between Egypt and all key African countries in Egypt. Once we have more stability, especially after the crisis of Gaza and Israel, after the crisis between Ukraine and Russia, once the world will be more stable, the growing rate will come back and reach to 7% and 8% as we aimed before the corona pandemic and before the Russian-Ukrainian crisis or war. So President Sisi all time sent a positive message to the world. Even now, today, Egypt hosting a mega conference, included Qatar, included Israel, included USA representative, to make a settlement of all problems related to Israel and Gaza. Once Israel and Gaza will be stable, the trade through the Suez Canal corridor and Suez Canal logistics area will be more stable. So the price of transportation and the price of logistics will go down. So the price of the final commodity or the final service will go down. So the inflation rate will go down. So I'm here to send a message to the leader of world, leader of France, leader of Germany, leader of USA, Biden especially. Please try to make a settlement of all the war and the crisis. To also President Putin, please try to make a settlement of all problems between you and Ukraine. The inflation rate reached to the maximum point. So also war will stop the growing rate, not only in Egypt, but in all African countries and in Europe and in France. We have a lot of economic challenge also in USA, a lot of inflation rate. So once the world will be more stable, so the inflation rate will decrease month by month, and the growing rate will increase, and the citizens of the world will have a surplus services in the services. We have a surplus in food and beverage. We have a service in lifestyle. So once we will be more stable also in Africa, the value and size of trade, internal Africa and outside Africa also will go up and growing. Also the climate change will be a key element affecting Africa. Africa country, the main affected country by the climate change.
Yes.
So once the war stopped, once the pollution industry stopped, so the future of Africa will be in a very good situation, in a better situation, and especially nowadays we find a lot of instability, not only of Africa and all country, even in Gulf, for example, even it's a stable country. So stability, political stability, economic stability, a lot of international agreement like COMESA and like free trade area, such an agreement and such instability, and the harmony between the leader of the world, especially key leader of the world, like President Sisi. President Sisi, a leader not only of Egyptian country, but one of the key leader in Africa, and all the key presidents in the world, especially Biden and Putin, work with Egypt as a key strategic country in Middle East and in North Africa. So once we have more stability, we will be in a very better situation. Let me also shed light, in starting from Jan 2024, Egypt will be a key member in the BRICS committee. Such a BRICS committee included a lot of African countries, like Egypt and South Africa, and the two countries is a very effective country in the world also. So once we make a settlement of all financial transaction between all this country in the BRICS by the local currency, so such a settlement by the local currency will lead to reduce the pressure in UN dollars demand. Once we reduce the pressure in dollar demand, the price of dollar will decrease step by step. So such international agreement, Egypt will be a member starting from 2024, will lead to more stability in the currency gap. Especially we have two price of central bank and the price of
the
black market. So once we starting operation in the BRICS, lead to more progress and lead to more stability in the currency price in Egypt.
Yes. Well, Mr. Khattab, now, since you brought it up, Egypt started effectively its membership within BRICS from January of 2024, last month. Now, how long would it take to actually finalize all the settlements and all the procedures in a way that would pave the way that, for Egypt to engage economically with the rest of the BRICS members? How long would it take, and what would it actually take?
I think by the end of the second quarter of 2024, we will start operation actually. Such international agreement needs some time in order to take place, because it's not related to Egypt only, it's related to Egypt, to China, to Brazil, to South Africa. So also Gulf, like Dubai, like Arab Emirates, also member on the BRICS. So already we have a direct relation with this country, but once we will be a member in the BRICS, we have a lot of support, like support in tariff between this country, support by settlement of the product and the clearance of the product by the local currency, support by increasing the volume and size of trade between this country. So already we have a trade and exchange of trade between these two countries, but such a trade will increase month by month until we reach to accepted size and volume of the trade.
Yes.
Once we got this point, a lot of surplus between this country will happen, and a lot of surplus and will delivered to every citizen related to the BRICS country.
Yes. Well, sir, now you've mentioned how Africa is rich in its natural resources and agriculture and mining and petrochemical products. Now, the president has been calling for many years now of strengthening ties within the African states, especially the economic and trade relations. Now, how would we work on, or what can be done to actually encourage African countries to push forward and strengthen inter-African trade rather than having trade relations with other continents, be it other continents in Asia, other countries in Asia or Europe or the Americas? What sort of incentives could we place or put for African countries to encourage more trade within the African states rather than the other continents?
In order to increase the volume and the size of trade between Egypt and all African countries, we need to spend at least $100 billion in infrastructure and in supporting industry and supporting agriculture field. And this is a speech sent by Minister Mashat, Minister of International Cooperation. We have a gap in expenditure related to the African country by $100 billion. And such a gap also related to the climate change on the other side. We have already, we should take some subsidies from the key countries like Germany, France, like USA, because this is industry country and the pollution related to industry reflected to the African country. So such a gap should be supported by African Bank, by International Monetary Fund Bank, by World Bank, and already a lot of international banking like World Bank invest in Africa, especially in solar energy and in mining and oil and the gas recovery and in agriculture field and in petrochemical. I think Egypt petrochemical industry product increased by 320% this year, and especially after the Ukrainian-Russian war, because the price of oil and gas increased, and so leaded to Egypt to have a surplus in the field of petrochemical, especially after we have been banned production line of gas. We have already surplus, and petrochemical especially depend mainly in the liquid gas, especially. So Dr. Sharif Al-Gabali, the chairman of African Committee in People's Assembly or in Egyptian Parliament, sent a positive message about increase in the size of export in Egypt in the field of petrochemical especially, and in the field of agriculture we have increase in export filed by 120% this year, and this is a good achievement to Minister of Agriculture in Egypt, because we're covering the local market and we make export of all product to the African country and the Arab country. So such surplus and such success in the field of agriculture, in the field of oil and gas, in the field of petrochemical, in the field of cements, and the field of some industry lead to more surplus to the Egyptian economy, and they need to a lot of positive growing rate. Even we face a lot of pandemic disease like corona, a lot of instability, political instability in the area, but still Egypt in a very good position. In the same time, we're hosting more than 9 billion refugees from Arab country, from African country. So such refugee will be uploaded in the Egyptian budget, because we support by food and by subsidies, by food and beverages, support by electricity, support, a lot of support done by the Egyptian government to 9 million refugees in all field of education, field of healthcare. In the same time, we support Gaza by 110 of food and beverage. Also, such subsidies send to Arab country and send to African country lead to stronger the relation and tie between this country and will reflect positively in the coming 2 or 3 years in the economic file by a very positive indicator.
Mr. Khattab, you've mentioned the importance of actually investing in infrastructure to help increase the trade relations within the African continent. And there was a lot of talk about the Cairo-Cape Town sort of road that would help trade relations within the African states. But you've also mentioned that one of the biggest challenges and obstacles are the political instabilities within many of the African countries, and Africa is known to have different difficulties, political difficulties from time to time. And as you've mentioned, there's the Israeli-Gaza conflict, there's the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, there was the coronavirus pandemic, and there could be future issues and developments, negative developments that would hinder the strengthening and increase of African trade. So how can we actually push forward building such an infrastructure and having such a road in spite of having any economic or security difficulties within many of the African states?
I think in Africa we have a lot of agreements supporting the progress, especially in the infrastructure like COMESA and like the free trade area also agreements. And if you go back for 3 years, Egypt make host a COMESA forum in Sharm el-Sheikh and also hosting investment in Africa forum in New Capital Mission City. And from 1 month only, we hosting also a lot of mega African forum in Fifth Settlement, also meeting room. Such a conference and forum committee and the panel discussing how to make the process of export and import between the African country and the outside African country go by very easy way and very low cost. Egypt, for example, make a lot of agreement with Mombasa in order to make a connection and also try to make organizing of export and import orders. Once you have a committee responsible for organizing and the cooperation in the field in the field of demand and supply of all product, such organizing and the cooperation between the African country will lead to minimizing the cost of the product. For example, if you have manufacturing in the field of car industry, for example, in Egypt, and you need to make export of cars to African country. Once you organizing your order with another spare part in manufacturing industry in the same field, so the process of export and import between this country will be take less time and will be very easy to communicate. Such a very easy way of communication between the African country lead to minimizing the cost of export and import. Once we reduce the cost of logistics between the country, we will find a product by accepted and competitive price. So nowadays, after the inflation, a lot of people, even it rich, search for the very low cost price of the product. So the competition in the coming 3 years will depend on the quality and at the same time the price of the product. In Africa, we have 1.5 billion citizens and a lot of 80% of the citizens youth. So we have a very cheap labor force. In the same time, we have the raw material of all products. We have raw material of coffee, raw material of a lot of meat, a lot of agricultural product. So once we send this product as a final product to the world, especially to the key country like Germany and France, we will have and we will maximizing the profitability of this product because we create a lot of job to our youth, we create a lot of industry, and in the same time we have a logistics area very strong like China. China succeed because China have a lot of very strong logistics communication with all the key countries in the world. So once we have a logistics process very easy, and we have a free tariff between this country, and we have easy move between the borders of the country, this is very effective also. We will reach to the African country, and we will go out of Africa to the key countries, especially the very rich countries like France and like Germany and USA, because such a country will take the product by a very high price. So we will maximizing the propriety of the raw material located in Africa, especially oil and gas, gold, and all agriculture products like coffee.
Mr. Khattab, now, you've mentioned what Egypt and the African continent is known for and rich of mining, agriculture, petrochemicals, liquefied natural gas, and renewable energy as well. Now, what sort of products can we actually export to the African continent, and what products that would be more suitable or more in demand by the European continent and the Americas?
America take from Africa phosphate fertilizers and also polyethylene and cements and oil and gas and a lot of agricultural products especially, and the meat. The price of meat increased all over the world, especially after Ukrainian-Russian crisis, because the corn planted in Ukraine and Russia. So such a product will lead the world food and beverage. Food security. Food security is a very strong point. We take this point in our consideration starting from Corona pandemic. Once the logistics of the world stopped, the price of rice increased, the price of corn increased, the price of meat, inflation take place. So a lot of key countries depend mainly in African country in import of all agricultural product. So I think in the future we have the chance to build a lot of industries related to petrochemical sector. We have a lot of chance related to also manufacturing of all agriculture product. Agriculture will lead the world, especially after the war of Ukraine-Russia stopped, because Ukraine, in order to start the plantation and declaration of land after the war, it needs at least 5 years in order to have a ready infrastructure after they destroyed by the Russian war.
Yes.
So such a period will give African the chance to start operation from now and ready to make export to all agriculture products, not only to Russia and Ukraine, but to all the world.
But what about Africa? Africa, the rest of the African continents are also very rich in agricultural products and food and beverage. And so what can we export to the African states if they are already as well rich?
African states aims to, and the need from Egypt, a lot of some refrigerators, some mechanical machine also, and Egypt in the last 2 years launched a lot of industry related to sugar, related to also food industry, related to fish industry, and in the same time a lot of mainly we have surplus in fertilizers, and we already export to Africa and Europe, and in cement also, and some refrigerators, some TV, some machines, computers, a lot of computers also. Egypt take good achievement. In the same time, we aim to export of electricity to African country like Libya, for example, and Arab country to also like Jordan and Saudi Arabia, would already have a connection with this key country. A lot also we aim to present some service from especially new capital city, like programming and like IT or information technology especially. In the same time, we will be more advanced also in the field of education, even it's primary or high or education. A lot of African African citizens come to Egypt to have a study in African university located in Egypt with cooperation with a lot of international agreement between Egypt and France, for example, because a lot of African citizens have a study by French and some by English.
Yes.
So Egypt also make a hosting to a lot of students, and the National Academy for Training Youth also selected a lot of African citizens to have a training here in National Academy for Training Youth in Egypt, and this is supported 100% by President Sisi. In Youth Forum we host, and also in every Youth Forum we invite a lot of African citizens and African people to come in order to see the civilization in Egypt and how we will be the leader country of Africa in the future.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Egypt is looking forward to increase its trade with Africa by 20% in the coming 5 years. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Egypt aims to strengthen its trade relationship with Africa, looking to boost intra-continent trade by 20% in the coming 5 years to reach $7.4 billion. According to head of the Egyptian Commercial Service in an interview with Asharq, this increase will be driven by African Continental Free Trade Agreement, a pact between the 39 member states of the African Union to enable the free flow of goods and services across the continent. He said Egypt, along with 47 countries, has ratified the agreement. He expected the rest of the countries to ratify the trade agreement by the second half of 2024. During summer of 2023, the Cabinet's Media Center stated that African intra-trading was recorded at less than 18% compared to around 50% in trade between Asian countries and 70% between European countries. Egypt's exports to Africa increased by 10% by the end of the year to an estimated value of $5.5 billion. The chairman of the Egyptian Chamber of Chemical Industries at the Federation of Egyptian Industries highlighted the importance of strengthening ties with African countries, emphasizing their potential as vibrant markets with a collective population of 1.5 billion. He stressed that Egypt plays an important role as a reliable gateway to Africa. During the IATF 2023 event held in Cairo, which hosts over 1,950 foreign exhibitors. The Ministry of Trade recently published data that shows a 1.2% increase in trade exchange between Egypt and African nations, reaching $5.82 billion in initial 8 months of 2023 compared to $5.75 billion in the corresponding period of 2022. He further emphasized the need to bolster relations with Africa and enhance exports, particularly in petrochemicals and fertilizers to various countries across the continent. The chemical industrial sector in Egypt, contributing significantly to the economy, boasts 14,000 companies and a total investment of $30 billion. Egypt's chemical industry sector, a major player in the country's industrial exports, witnessed chemical exports totaling $6.6 billion in 2021. Meanwhile, Egyptian exports to Africa rose by 13% year-on-year during the first 10 months of 2023 to hit $6 billion, driven by exports of marble, cement, phosphate fertilizers. Meanwhile, Egypt's Trade and Industry Minister Ahmed expressed Egypt's commitment to trade and industry agenda in Africa, especially amid global challenges that have affected the African economy.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Mr. Khattab. Sir, now 20% within the next 5 years to reach $7.4 billion. Under the current economic situation in Egypt and around the world, is that a realistic goal to set?
Yes, Egypt aims to stress the trade relation with Africa in the coming 5 years to reach 7.4 billion. Nowadays we have 5.5 billion as volume of trade. Such increase by 20% lead a lot of expenditure in the field of infrastructure, in the field of upgrading a lot of ports like Sokhna Port, like Alex Port, like Med Port, and also Mombasa Port and Jabal Ali Port. So a lot of upgrading and facilitating of the logistics between the key country in Africa lead to this percent to be done, and we have to reach to 25%, not only 20. A lot of international agreement between Egypt and Salalah, especially in Oman, and Jabal Ali port, and a lot of key countries in the world aims to increase the volume and size of trade by 20% in the coming 5 years. As I said before, once we have a political stability, once the war stopped, and I hope after the new election of USA presidents, we have a new president, have an open mind enough to make a settlement of the war between Russia and Ukraine and make a pressure to Israel to stop war in Gaza. Today, we have a lot of positive negotiation between Egypt, Qatar, and Gaza and Israel. And I hope we stopped the war even for 3 months or 4 months in order to have more stability in the area and more support to the Palestinian citizen in order to have education, medical support, and have support in the food support also. And after the presidency, USA presidency election, I think we have a new scenario of settlement between Ukraine and Russia, especially the key countries like Germany or France. No 100% in the war with Russia is very difficult. And the inflation percentage in Germany and France more than Egypt, and a lot of American citizens also complain from the increase of inflation and the shortage of a lot of facilities, because this key country have a surplus every year in the budget, but nowadays America have a deficit in the budget, and a lot of key countries also like Germany and French, and the international government of America and Germany make a lot of taxation to the citizens. Such a taxation will be a burden to all the citizens, not only in Egypt but also in Germany and France and America, for example. So once the new election will be done in November, and once we have a new president, we have a new negotiation by different people. So I think all countries suffering from the war, and all countries know 100%, we should stop this war.
Yes.
Not only in Russia and Ukraine, but also in Israel, and also in Saudi Arabia, make a pressure to Israel, and Jordan, Egypt, Qatar. So I hope at the end of this year, we have more stability in the region, lead to more progress in the economic file, lead to more communication with African country also, and Egypt as a key country, ready 100%, because we have already ready infrastructure to make export of all products, ready infrastructure through the Suez Canal corridor, Suez Canal logistics area related to Alex Port, and Sokhna Port. A lot of airport also launched in new capital city in Marsa Alam in 6th of October. So such a facility will lead Egypt to reach to all country in Africa, and by very easy way, and in a very short time, and in a very low cost.
And that's why probably Africa is listed as the top African countries in terms of attractiveness for foreign investors. Now, one last question, because we are running out of time. Now, Mr. Khattab, you've mentioned that Egypt exports a lot of equipment to the African states. Now, the equipments are manufactured and produced here in Egypt. So in order to increase our exports to the African continent, we need to strengthen our industry. And to work with that and to strengthen our industry, we will need to import a lot of spare parts and a lot of electronic equipment from Europe or the Americas. Now, how do we find this balance between trying to strengthen our relations, economic and trade relations with the European market and the American market, and at the same time increase our productivity and increase our export to the African continent?
So, in order to have a qualified industry file, we should make upgrading of our industries. Such upgrading need some equipment from abroad.
Yes.
But we should reduce the percentage of product we import from abroad and make an equivalent local equipment.
Yes.
After the increase in the price of US dollars against EGP,
Yes.
a lot of industry in Egypt make some equipment local, and it meets expectation, and also the industry still work.
Yes.
So the investment of education and research will find a solution to
Yes.
depend on ourselves in the local product.
Yes.
Once we depend on ourselves in the field of industry, we have the know-how also, and we make upgrading of the industry file, volume and size of our manufacturing product will increase, especially in Africa. Why? Because Africa, like Egypt, we have the similar market and the similar citizen. So I think the Egyptian industry file have a success in the last 2 years, because after the increase in price, the price of the product industry done in Egypt is very cheap,
Yes.
even with comparison with the China product. And the quality of industry increased day by day, and a lot of training done to a lot of mega project, even it's governmental industry or private industry, and we have a lot of
Yes.
success story in the field of industry, and we make export to Germany in some equipment related to car industry especially.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Khattab has mentioned, it's a fine balance trying to meet and increase exports to the African continent and also strengthen your local industry and strengthen and increase trade with the rest of the international community. But it stems from the research and development and working on the infrastructure and the political stability throughout the whole continent. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my distinguished guest, Mr. Ahmed Khattab, member of the African Committee at the Canadian Council and the economic expert. Mr. Khattab, thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's a pleasure, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.